The animation is probably going to be one of the easiest and hardest things to talk about on this analysis portion. For one, the animation is not something that you would compare or even associate with modern TV animation. I mean, when you look at shows like Adventure Time, Ben 10 or SpongeBob, or even modern CBBC animated shows like Dennis the Menace or Pet Squad, it really doesn't quite compare. However, it is by no means simple or even cheap looking, so it's going to take some very in-depth analysis to truly evaluate it, especially since the animation improves a bit as the series progresses. As I mentioned near the beginning, the animation looks a lot like the animation from director Martin Rosen, who obviously didn't work on the show, but it is natural to see why the animation team could have had some inspiration from Watership Down and Plague Dogs. However, the design of the characters in those movies were made to look more like the animals they represented, right down to the facial design. The animals here in this show are made to look a little bit more anthropomorphic, having more human-like faces, body language and even characteristics, with walking on rear legs and using their front limbs to point, pick up and even punch with. Plus, the animals are made to look more like they're acting like humans, adding again to the idea of the animals being more humanitarian than the actual humans in the show. However, these are only select moments. For the most of the dialogue exchanges, the animals stay stock still, and they almost never say anything during some of the more active scenes. This shows how limited the animation was, and they must have had difficulties trying to match the dialogue with the mouth movement when the animals were moving. That being said, it does make more sense in the story. If you were in immense danger, you wouldn't spend time talking, you just bloody run. So, yeah, in that kind of idea, it does make more sense. And it's sort of become a theme of the show and the characters that they become more civilized in their discussions when they're either moving or at a steady pace or not at all. Plus, it has become a sort of theme of the show and the characters that they have more civilized discussions when they're either moving at a steady pace or not at all. But like I've said in the past, the watercolour backgrounds look gorgeous, and while the more bold, cartoony look of the characters does contrast a bit, it does allow them to stand out from the background and be seen easier, which is good because the colour palette for the whole show seems to be very dull and natural looking, which does make it seem more like real life, but if the characters were matching with the background in style as well as colour, it would be hard to see them, so the distinctive style does help. As I hinted earlier, the animation does evolve quite a bit over the show's run, allowing for a more fluent movement and great expressions. How this change occurred though is still a bit of a mystery to me, but it does allow for much greater and more entertaining visuals, and the animation only gets better from here. There are obviously a lot of reoccurring themes in this show, but the one that's the most prominent is that of death and lingering danger, which does make sense. All of these animals are outside their comfort zones and safe havens, so they're naturally going to come across a lot of outside threats, many of which they've never seen before. I think the element of impending mortality into this series makes it a very unique show from other children's cartoons out there. I mean, the idea of a very long, overarching story and having some darker elements is making it already a little bit different. But many of the darkest children's cartoons in the world probably wouldn't even think of killing off characters within their show. And with this one, even though some of the characters that do get killed off are not major players, and some of them spend most of the episodes they die and absent, we normally do see them from the very beginning and have an episode or two establishing their character. So it still makes the death element of it very morbid and even in some cases shocking. And it definitely adds a very dark, foreboding element to the constant idea of the Grim Reaper following these characters around. But the other thing that helps them get through this, and the thing that helps defeat that fear for the characters, is the other major theme, and that is the idea of teamwork. This, along with the death theme, is a constant state in the series until the very end, and it carries on into the next series very heavily as well. But what's so great about it is that they have to learn to work as a team. And this is a very human element, and it helps us root for them even more because we want to see them get through it, so we want them to learn how to work as a team. As another example to this element used in TV, especially in a kids show, I've thoroughly been enjoying the more recent TMNT series on Nickelodeon, and one of the things they introduce in that first series is the idea of the group having to learn to work as a team because they haven't worked as a team before. It has some comedic elements to it, but in the end it's all about the idea of them having to learn to bring your team together and overcome greater threats. And that's the whole purpose of that theme both in that show and this one. They all have to learn to work together to overcome threats and dangers, and for the most part they succeed, and that gives us a triumphant feeling and helps us like these characters even more. The only other major theme that is at use here is that of the idea of a journey, but that kind of borrows elements from the other two themes as well, but it's still a nice theme to have in a show, and the idea of a journey, because it switches it up locations on a regular basis and brings them to all sorts of different scenarios in every episode, and allows it to be very varied in what the show delivers us. Overall, this is a very good first series for this show. It establishes the characters, the themes, and the overall story superbly, and even though it has a very bookended narrative, it does help set up the events for the following series very well. It is hard to deny, though, that many fans and critics would definitely call this the least eventful of the three series. And while it's hard to deny that, I can't deny that this is still a very entertaining and very enjoyable series. Very well written, very well paced, and even though there may not be everything in there that is perfect, and even then it's not exactly, the things that are good are not exactly perfect either. It's still a very entertaining series, and it's got that very sort of warm, comforting feeling to it that makes it very enjoyable to watch. And so, with that, that's what I think of the first series.
Hello there, it's me again, and I'm here to bring you a final closure on the Animals of Farthing Wood retrospective on this cold Sunday morning. Just to say, first off, even though the views haven't been quite what I expected, I have to give insane amount of gratitude and thanks to anybody who has watched this series. Even if you are minor in number, just the fact that somebody has seen it means a lot to me. I really thank every single one of you for that. So with that, I'm sure that a lot of you have a few questions on just what's going to happen next, and obviously the main question would be, am I going to do Series 2? Which, it's a bit of an interesting question. I would personally love to do Series 2, and it's actually my favourite of all three series, and I have a lot to say about it, both in critical analysis and, of course, jokes-wise. What many of you may not realise is that with Animals of Farthing Wood retrospective, I actually wrote, shot, and edited it over my summer holiday, so it wasn't until much later until I was uploading it. In fact, I'm recording this now as I'm still editing the second episode, so you can probably tell that it's been a long time to get it done. So even though I probably will do Series 2, because during the summer holidays I'll probably have work to get on with. Not that much really. There's not a whole lot of work to get on with between academic years, so I'll probably try and get on with that. I would love to do it. Plus it was a lot of fun doing this anyway, so it'd be a lot of fun to do the next series. So I'll definitely see what I can do, but if it does happen, it won't happen again until a year later. In terms of what else I'm going to be doing in the meantime, obviously, now that we're near the end of the year, I'll be doing my 2014 in a nutshell video, so look out for that in the January early weeks. And of course, I am actually also working on a script for a review of The Snow Queen, so keep an eye out for that during the Christmas break. And I can't think of much else I would want to do, because now that I've really kind of found a niche for reviewing, I kind of want to keep going into that. Though I may occasionally make a few edited music videos just for funsies, or if I have an idea that comes to my head of any kind, I'll keep doing that as well. In terms of just what I may do in the future as well, I was also thinking of potentially, like you may have noticed in the actual series, I joked with the idea of doing a Watership Down TV show retrospective, which I may do, but I've not actually watched the show at all. That was what was different about Animals of Farthing Wood. I grew up watching that show, and before I wrote the script for the first series, I'd already watched them all through consecutively, which made it a lot easier. So I probably might go and do that at some point, probably after I've done the Animals of Farthing Wood thing, if I'm going to continue with it. And it would take me a lot longer because I have to both watch it for initial purpose and then watch it a second time over to then start writing with it. I also may end up doing Noah's Island because of course I watched a little bit of that when I was growing up, and of course a lot of people that worked on Farthing Wood went on to that too. And I've also had the idea of potentially doing a new series called Europeversal, or Cinema of Europe, where I do animated or just movies in general, or TV shows that specifically are from the European continent, which I would love to do, but it just depends on what I can do, because of course you may have noticed from the background I am actually not at my parents' house anymore. I'm back in my uni halls of residence, which I've been for many months now, so I've got lots of work to get on with that don't involve my YouTube channel. But with that out of the way, I'm hoping that that answers any other questions, and of course if you have any questions at all that I didn't answer, please make sure to post them and I'll see what I can do to clarify them. And just one more time, thank you everybody for helping me just make what I've done worthwhile. It may not have been what I expected, but it still comes to be just giving me this sense of satisfaction to know that someone's watched this and may have ended up enjoying it, finding it funny, finding it informative, finding it nostalgic. Just if any of that has happened, I'm grateful for it and I'm very happy about that. And so from me, George Overington, aka Headphones UK, I thank you all, and I'll see you later.